We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Ask Gibbo tonight, no Super Mac again. We have just been having a little chat, me and John, though, and yeah, same old. Malcolm is continuing to rest at home and awaiting doctor's instructions. But as always, we always pass on your very best to him, and he does. Via his good lady, and John has spoken to himself as well. Always passes on his thanks, so it doesn't go unnoticed, and it is very much appreciated. So yes, the road is long, but get well soon, Super Mac. We still have a lot of love for you on this platform. Let's get back to Newcastle United then, and 2 games against Chelsea since John and I last did the show, and I was lucky enough to be at both of them, and most of you will be well aware of what my thoughts were about the game at the weekend. But last night's game, a 2-0 win against Chelsea in the last 16 of the Carabao Cup, sees Newcastle go through to the quarterfinals, which will be played week commencing the 16th of December. And we got another home draw, this time against Brentford, another all-Premiership tie. But when you look at some of the teams still in the competition, that's a slightly more fortuitous draw than we could have had. So not going to complain about that. But a lot of you obviously heard me as well say that I would have given Kraft a run out last night. Well, sure enough, Eddie put Kraft in, and I think along with Tonali and Longstaff and Lewis Hall really shone last night. Tonali bossing the midfield without playing alongside Bruno. We got a chance to really look at what he can do in that role, and he shone, no doubt about it. As for Longstaff, he continues that wonderful run that he had in the team of not being on the losing side. And I know that will annoy some people in the chat, but it goes to show that this guy, is a good luck talisman for Newcastle. And on his birthday of all days, gets a win and could have had a goal as well. Lewis Hall just goes from strength to strength. Superb for me at Stamford Bridge. The man of the match by far down there. In a below par performance, it has to be said, for Newcastle. But Emil Kraft, star man for me in so many ways, because he defies logic with his age, defies logic with the fact that he hasn't really played a great deal of football since he came back from his latest layoff. Came in last night, and Chelsea changed the team. Fair play to them. They've got 20 plus players and more who they could have played last night. They changed the team, to give others a run out. That team could have still beaten Newcastle had Newcastle not turned up, and Emil Kraft had to turn up and do a job, and he did it admirably. And a special mention as well for somebody who, I've got to be honest, I haven't been impressed with so far, Lloyd Kelly. He came in and did a sterling job at centre half, giving Dan Burn a rest. And I think the one thing that Eddie Howe has given himself after last night's performances, and this is what you want as a manager, of course, is a big headache, because there are a few players there who we will all be looking at now, including Eddie and Jason Tindall, going, Arsenal on Saturday, is he worth giving him a go? Is it worth giving him a go? And a change of formation. Finally, Newcastle fans were desperate for a change of formation. 4-3-3, it's gone stale, it's gone stagnant. We're being sussed out. We can't play one up front anymore. It's too much pressure on Isak. That's why he's not scoring goals. Well, Eddie did something about it last night, and did something about it at Stamford Bridge. It has to be said, but with a different lineup. But it worked last night. And I know people will say, well, it was against a weakened side, but it was, there's no such thing as a weak side with Chelsea. But that's my opinion on last night's game, John. Give us your views, big man.
Yeah, relief, wonderful, glorious relief, first and foremost, because we can't even contemplate what would have happened had Newcastle been knocked out by Chelsea and then had to go on to face Arsenal a couple of days later, because the form in the league of recent times has been absolutely dreadful. I mean, yeah, like you with Kraft, I called both matches the way I saw them. I said we'd lose down there and win up here. Why would we win up here after losing down there? Well, apart from the obvious, i.e. we're at home and we always play better at home and we get good support at home. We don't get beaten that often. I know we lost to Brighton, but we don't get beaten that often in front of our own. And we knew that Chelsea would make changes, and they made 11. They did the same when they played Panathinaikos in Europe the week before, and they won 4-1 there. So, it does work. However, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, I'm thrilled a bit. It has given us a huge lift. The draw, providing we take the right attitude into the match, and I'm certain that we will, the draw is as good as we could have got outside of the possibility of Southampton at home. And I would expect us to reach yet another semi-final if the League Cup is a consequence. But, it was what we've got to do is take the confidence, Steve, that we got last night, take the repaired morale, take the joy of the terraces and go in and front-footed against Arsenal. But we must not allow this to become a one-off. We must have it where it's a launching pad to get other results, because like it or not, it was against Chelsea's reserve side. Now they've got a very good reserve side. They've got a World Cup winner in there in Fernandes. They've got a European Nations winner in there in Cucurella. But it is still their second 11. They put the first 11 out on the first day. And what I was grateful for, while they have got good players elsewhere, I was grateful that they didn't have Nicholas Jackson and Cole Palmer up front, because I think that is the difference. They would have had a cutting edge there. They didn't have a cutting edge against us. But the other thing, which you touched on completely, is that the changes we made, I don't think we made them to rest anybody. I think we made them because we have been playing well below par. And if there hadn't been a midweek League Cup game, I think the changes that were made would have been considered to be against Arsenal if there hadn't been a midweek game. I thought Kraft was absolutely outstanding. What he does bring is he's a throwback, isn't he? He's Frank Clark. He's a throwback. He's a fullback that actually defends. These days fullbacks go forward. Fullbacks are wingers. You play two wingers on each side, don't you? But Kraft is an old-fashioned, no frills, honest to goodness defender. Now, if you've got attackers coming onto you, which Chelsea had and Arsenal will have, incidentally, then somebody like Kraft will give you that steadiness that you use. Livramento is the future of the club. We all know what we all think of him. He's the future of the club. But at this moment, he's still a Ben. And he's a Rolls Royce, and he wants to get on his bike and he wants to get away, and he's thinking about attacking. And he got caught out badly at Stamford Bridge, and I love him to death, and I think he's great. He got caught out, but that great ball from Cole Palmer that brought the first goal, when it was played, if you freeze it and go back to it on YouTube, when it was played, the winger Neto, Livramento had 5 yards on him. By the time the ball went over Livramento's head, Neto had 2 yards on Livramento. Got down, squared it, and it was a goal. I thought Kraft did marvellously. I thought Kelly, who's had a very slow introduction to his Newcastle United career, was absolutely brilliant. Got in a couple of great blocks. He's a lot quicker than Dan Burn, and I know before anybody jumps in and says anything, Gray's Monument is quicker than Dan Burn, but nonetheless, Kelly is quick and was quick around the box, and I think he's more of a centre half than a left back. I thought he did well, and Tonali did absolutely terrific. And I think the reason why, I don't think that it's, and a lot of fans think it's because Bruno was out of the way and he can't play with Bruno. I don't quite go down that avenue. I think it's because he was in the centre of the three. And that's his perfect position. When Bruno plays, he sometimes has got to play on the right or left because Bruno dominates that middle of the road line. Tonali played there. That's where he looks his best. Bruno, when he come on and took up a left-sided position as a sub, I thought he had a good half hour. He did well in the half hour, but but what I was delighted to see the manager do was not sacrifice Tonali from that centre role because he looked miles better there. And to be truthful, the midfield that was fielded of Longstaff, Tonali and Willock looked a better balanced midfield than when the big three were alongside each other because Joe was further up as a left-sided attacker, almost left wing in Gordon's position. And I thought Willock and Joe Linton combined very, very well on that left side. They complement each other in the way they played, and I thought they did super, and it got us round the problem of outside right because Harvey Barnes has been disappointing for me when we've used him on the wing and switched Gordon over. Murphy wasn't available. Almiron's yesterday's man, but playing Joe Linton out on the left and Gordon on the right got rid of a problem for us. And he has, as you rightly said, he's got a problem to think about for the Arsenal game because a lot of those that he brought in have every right to think they should start against Arsenal. And by the way, when you were saying, he's got a headache, Steve, for the weekend, you would have had a bigger bloody headache if we'd lost, wouldn't he? You would have had a bigger headache putting the team out against Arsenal if we got beat by Chelsea. But it was, I'm absolutely delighted. It was a huge plus. But please let us remember that one swallow doesn't make a summer, all that sort of thing. We've got to get rid of a horrendous set of figures in the Premier League when we play against Arsenal, which is no mean feat, by the way, because Arsenal will be playing their first team. Chelsea played their second team. Arsenal will be playing their first team. And the figures aren't good. No wins in the last 5 Premier League games. 2 points out of the last 15, 9 goals scored in 9 Premier League games, 12th in the table behind Forest, Brentford, Fulham, Bournemouth. We've got to get rid of those figures. Those are atrocious figures. We've got a bit of optimism, a bit of leeway. We've got the crowd behind us again. We were front foot first half. We did it the right way around. In the first half, we got the double dagger thrust, front foot pressing, double dagger thrust, 2 goals up. Second half, game management. You got the ball. We are in the next round of the cup, 45 minutes away from it. It's up to you to break us down. It's not up to us to score another couple necessarily. And I thought we handled the game, we kept our shape defensively and handled the game very well, Steve.
I mean, would it be fair to say this might have been a blip, John? Because we've been through
what's been a blip?
The recent form that we've had.
It's been some blip, by the way, mate. When we've got 2 points out of 15, no wins in the last 5 games, 9 goals scored all season in the league, and 12th in the table. That's some little blip. I would hate to be in a consistent run of nothing.
I get where you're coming from, but what I mean is that the start of the season, people are saying it wasn't a great start of the season, right? Okay, it wasn't. But from our perspective, it was, we could have gone top if we'd beat Fulham, and we didn't. We got beat off Fulham, but we could have gone top of the Premier League. But the last 5 games without a win, that's been the blip. We had one probably last year, was it November time, where we couldn't win a game. All teams go through them, all teams get them. We haven't conceded a lot of goals in that period. We haven't scored a lot of goals in that period, but maybe damage limitation. If we can turn things round over the next month, then, you know, people will forget this, and all the people questioning how we'll go back underneath their shells. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You know, we haven't got the injury problems. We haven't got Europe, which we had last season. Everyone thought it was going to be a great season. Maybe it has been just a bad little month, you know, a bad run of form, and maybe things are about to change, John. Last night, maybe the start of it. It's about momentum, John. You've watched Newcastle enough to know that, and a result like last night's result could change our whole season.
Of course it could. Of course it could. But of course, being Geordies, we live on a pogo step. We're always up and down. I mean, you know, we jump off a pogo step and go onto the trampoline. It's Geordies by nature. We've had that many downs that we yearn for an up, and when we're getting up, we think we're marching on Europe, literally. It gave us a terrific amount of hope last night. We are better than we have been in the league with the results, but we've got to go on and prove it, because the fixtures, after we play Arsenal, the fixtures leading up to Christmas are very good. I know the next game after that's Nottingham Forest, and they've gone off on a flyer, and so they're much more difficult than we thought they are. And we've got your mate Chris Wood waiting for us, and my mate Elliot Anderson waiting for us.
Hold on, John, hold on. You mean this Chris Wood?
I don't recognise him. That's a goal-scoring centre forward there.
16 goals, just behind Cole Palmer and Erling Haaland since the 23rd of December last year. Third top Premier League scorer, mate.
Yeah, but you know why? Because he's playing a team that suits his style. Yeah. Just belt the ball up to him and hope it comes off him. And you know what? Can you remember when we used to say all those things about Miggy Almiron when he had his season? The only other trouble is that the other 4 seasons he's had with us, bless him, he couldn't hit a barn door. And we'll see how well Chris does next season. I wish him well. He's a lovely lad. He's a terrific lad. That's great. I just don't want him particularly to be centre forward for my team. He would have been good on the bench at the moment with the lack of forwards that we have. But no. But as I was saying, when you look at the run-up to Christmas, after we play Arsenal, there's only Liverpool that would really frighten you, that we've got in the run of fixtures. They are a good run-up. So if we can avoid defeat against Arsenal and then get on a run, then, which is possible when you look at the fixtures, we've got a very heavy time over Christmas. Big fixtures over Christmas, but the run up to Christmas is more than decent. But what we've got to do, what the team's got to do, is take positivity out of last night, take optimism out of last night, but keep realism. The facts are that if we lost to Arsenal, to add onto those awful Premier League figures I give you, it wouldn't look good at all. We have got to go with the right attitude, but we've give ourselves a lift, and we've give the fans a lift on the terraces. I mean, you know why? Because within about 30 seconds, Anthony Gordon flew over to the wing on the opposite side of the pitch, the old Popular side, with a terrific tackle, got the ball into touch, sort of went ole to the crowd, who loved every minute of it, set a pattern that we cared and we were going to be front foot. And we've got to take that into Arsenal, because believe you me, this isn't a walk in the park because we've got a result against Chelsea. This is Arsenal's first team, and this is the second best team in the Premier League over the last 2.5 seasons. They've been runners up to Man City in the last 2 seasons, and they are a strong side, not unbeatable. And we can do well against them, but only if we take the right attitude and a realistic attitude. And we've got to banish the figures I've mentioned. That is absolutely a must.
Obviously, the only man who can answer this question is the England manager at this moment in time. But Tom says Tonali was the best player on the pitch last night, much better in that position. But I thought Lewis Hall had another great game. I've already mentioned that, of course, as have you. He's got to be looking at that England left-back slot. England are looking for a left-back. Is Lewis Hall the answer?
He's certainly likely to be the answer long term. It's just when. And of course, it's very difficult at the moment, isn't it? Because you've got an interim manager still in charge, Carsley. I mean, he's in charge of the next couple of games. And then you've got you've got the old Chelsea boss coming in. So it is very difficult to establish yourself in the England side at the moment until Thomas Tuchel comes in, because he's the one that's going to run the team. Lee might give you a cap in the meantime, which would be terrific. I'm thrilled to bits for Lewis Hall, because, you know, when you look at him, or have looked at him in the past, he looks like a little lad, doesn't he? He looks as if he's just come out of the under-18s. He's got that little boyish face. He's got a build which is not rippling muscle. He looks a little chunky lad that's just come out of the under-18s, and you wonder how well he's going to do. And he's done terrific, and he deserves every bit of praise going, because he had a tough time when he joined Newcastle. He joined them on loan. He couldn't get in the team, couldn't get a start. The odd time he got on as a sub, and he stuck at it, and And it must have been so hard, because it was his dad's team and his team when he was a kid, because it was his dad's team. And he stuck at it. And he always looked good on the ball, because he was brought up as a midfielder, so his distribution was good. He's getting to be more cute and savvy as a defender now. And I think he has been the most consistent player we've had this season, if you go week in, week out, because a lot of top players have underperformed this season. He hasn't. He's been a bright spark, and it was good to see him continue that last night. And yes, the lad's got an England future. He's already come up the right way through the England age groups into the under-21s, and the position is open for grabs, unlike some other positions in the England side. And I think he more than deserves a chance in that England side. Whether it comes with the transition, Carsley knows him through the age group situation. What Tuchel thinks of him, we've got to wait and see what he thinks of everybody in the English side. It's going to be interesting. But I think he's a massive plus for us this season. And boy, has he earned it, because he's had a terrific attitude through a very difficult time.
Hall will show his real potential when he's got a better centre back next to him, like last night, says Yano, which I would agree. Got a couple of questions coming in. I will get through them tonight. There's not that many, so I will get through as many as I can. Yes, Mark Byers, this is another one of those training tops that Adidas have brought out, mate. That's the alternative to the maroon one I've got, mate. It is nice. The only problem is, mate, it's white. You know, don't go and have a curry or a spaghetti bolognese when you're having this, mate. Can we talk about Pope punch and everything? It's become a concern. I did mention that from the game at the weekend. I got down early enough to see the warm-up, and I had a great seat bang behind the goal. So I got a chance to see Nick Pope warming up along with the other goalkeepers. And in the warm-up, he catches everything, John. It's you know, nobody pressurizing him. I mean,
of course not.
The other two goalkeepers are there. They're milling around him. And I get the impression they're there trying to be like centre halves, but they don't challenge him or anything because they don't want to injure him before the game. When it comes to the game, and he did it again Sunday and last night, he's punching the ball all the time. I mean, is he being told to do that, or do you think this is something in his mind, John? I mean, it's only he really knows, but I just sometimes think he makes the wrong decisions.
Well, when you punch the ball, you're at risk, aren't you? It's just got to come a centimetre off your knuckles in the wrong direction, and it'll go anywhere. You don't know. It's very rarely you can get a clean punch on the ball. And I mean, it's almost like being a continental goalkeeper. In the old days when England had, in Britain, had the great goalkeepers like Clements and like Shilton, and if you're talking about Britain, like Pat Jennings, and the great goalkeepers, they caught the ball and we led the way. The continental goalkeepers punched the ball, and he punches the ball a lot. And that is going to be a problem. And I tell you when it's going to be a problem, Steve, it's going to be a problem on Saturday, because Arsenal are the set piece masters. If they get a set piece or a corner, they just pile everybody in on the keeper, stick the ball under the crossbar, and there's Gabriel or somebody coming in. How many goals do they score off their set piece coach, who the minute they get a set piece round the box comes out of the dugout out instead of Arteta and stands on the side and directs operations. He is going to be tested on that punching of the ball against Arsenal, big time. And yes, that's been a concern for me. We've had a concern a lot as well about him not being the best with his feet. And I can understand that theory as well. But I'll tell you one thing, I haven't watched Chelsea twice in a few days. They've got two keepers who are horrible with their feet, a lot worse than Pope is. Sanchez down there gave us chance and chance again with his feet. And Jorgensen didn't do any better up here last night. But it worries me that Nick is getting more and more into punching the ball when in truth it can go anywhere. And by Jove, he's going to be. I hope he can sleep nicely on Friday night because he's going to be tested with a lot under his crossbar against Arsenal.
Yeah, certainly is. Yes, I thought I was right, Yvonne. He did only catch the ball cleanly once. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's up to him what he does. I mean, he's the goalkeeper. He's the one. I just wonder whether, maybe some people feel it's a bit of a problem. Is he worried about his shoulder? When he does punch it, it rarely goes far anyway. He should just be clattering people to claim the ball. Yeah, maybe it's just a confidence thing. Maybe he's never done that. I've never really followed his career until he came to Newcastle. So Tom says, Eddie, Jason, Graham and the players deserve a lot of credit for that performance last night. They've been taking some stick lately, but that was a phenomenal response. John says, John, it's good that Eddie appears to have more available options than was apparent 48 hours ago. Are you confident he'll deliver the right ones in the games ahead? He follows that up by saying, were you surprised with the quality shown by both Kelly and Kraft? And if so, do we need to bear in mind that the opposition were not a full strength? We've already talked about that. A bit of Kelly was almost Woodgate. But yeah, I mean, look, that's an interesting one, John. He says it's good that Eddie appears to have more available options than was apparent 48 hours ago. And he's certainly pointing towards Kraft, who we all knew could do the job. He did it when Shaw was out suspended at the start of the season. But Kelly's the surprise package, I think, that he came in last night and yes, heavily changed side, but he looked a good centre half. And I think the two things that will come into play with his mindset on Saturday, John, are Kelly's performance at centre half and how Tonali performed on his own in midfield.
Yeah, how Tonali played through the centre of midfield, for me, that is the difference. Don't move him to be the right side midfield with Bruno in the middle and somebody on the left, Willock or Joe Linton, because he's not so effective. He's effective when he sits in the middle and dictates things, which is what he did for AC Milan in the main and what he does for Italy. And I think that is the role he's got to play, because we spent 55 million pounds on him, and we've got to give him a chance, the best chance he's got to justify that outlay, and that is by playing centre midfield. Both Kraft and Kelly didn't really surprise me, because Kraft does what he does. He is a no-nonsense, no frills, he's not in the classic mould of fullbacks these days who are terrific on the bike going forward, like Hall is, like Livramento on a good day is, like Trippier can be. He is not in that range. He is an old throwback to the Frank Clark days. But when we're playing against Arsenal, who are very good wide on both sides, and Chelsea are very good wide, then somebody like Kraft, who can just be a steadying influence and not get caught out, not get sucked into sucker punches, does a good job. And Kelly, at the moment, I think Kelly gives us more in terms of his quickness, etc., etc. He showed last night, perhaps for the first time since he joined us, that why Eddie wanted to bring him from Bournemouth, because he's had a slow start. We haven't been certain whether he's a left back or a centre half, and Eddie's answer to that is he's both. But I think he's better is a left-sided centre half. He also suffered from the fact that he came in a very poor transfer window for Newcastle United, and he was a free transfer. So that accentuated, we haven't had a big name signing. We didn't pay a big dough for him. But I think Kelly's earned his place if he gets it on Saturday. And if Crafts kept in, I've got no sort of worries about that, because if you pick horses for courses, this might just be the sort of match that would is right for Craft because of the way they attack, etc., rather than Tino. Although I think the future of the club is Tino, but
Me
Craft
too.
would be in for the one game for me. Absolutely no better. And the other major decision is his composition of the midfield, not only keeping Tonali centre rather than on the right or on the left, but who's the two guys that go with him.
Yeah.
Because Longstaff and Willock put in, I don't think for 1 second he's going to keep Bruno out. It's his skipper, he loves him, etc. Bruno will play.
I
But
agree.
both Longstaff and Willock did enough, and they looked very balanced with Tonali to say that is as balanced as our midfielders look. So how he picks, not only what does he do with Tonali, and surely he keeps him centre of the three, because that's where but it's then who goes either side of him. And if one side of him is Bruno, and I think we both think it will be because he is the skipper and he was bright when he come on, then who's the unlucky one? Is it Willock or is it Longstaff?
Interesting. We'll look ahead to the game, of course, in the second half of the show. But it is now time to give a thank you to our sponsors.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can contact them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. A big thanks to our NUFC Matters fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Contact them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, or telephone 01670 632 460, or mobile 0791 666 4174. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the technical side of things. And don't forget, we are also a podcast, and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel, you can hit the like button, which is the little thumb under each video. You can click the share button to share it to your other social media, or subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button, and it is for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the join button, and you can join the channel for $1.99 a month to help support us. We do promote events on this channel. Derek Wright is holding his official book launch at the Tyneside Irish Centre, 15th of November. Tickets are £22, and that does include a signed book. Tickets are from newcastlelegends.com. Gold Star Promotions and Gateshead Leisure Centre are bringing Lennox Lewis to the area as part of his UK tour. You can get tickets by calling 0191 250 5066. Tickets start at £39. The Long Sands are back in aid of Dementia Matters and being supported by Lilac Lane and the Chris Norris Band. Saturday, January the 4th, 2025. Tickets £15 from newcastlelegends.com or from the Clooney box office. Peter Beardsley will be at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 10th of January, 2025. Tickets are available from newcastlelegends.com or from Woucher. An Evening with the Entertainers takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House, the 24th of January, 2025. You can buy tickets for that now from the box office, 0844 249 1000, or from the website, tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And the Magpie Lounge is now open at Gateshead Leisure Centre. 7 tokens for £99. Call 0191 250 5066 to book your tickets today. And the first of those tokens will be the 31st of January, an evening with Lee Clark. If you just want to buy tickets separately, call 0191 250 5066. And the book everyone's talking about, The Entertainers, 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, is on sale now. The book will be posted out on the 1st of December, written by Will Scott, over 30 contributors to this book. NewcastleLegends.com or Amazon to buy it today.
Mark Byers said, what was the atmosphere like in the ground, Steve? Came across very quiet on Sky Sports. Plus, also the players looked flat in the video showing them walking back to the dressing room. What's your thoughts? Paul says he thought the atmosphere was top draw last night, the best it's been all season. From the second minute when Gordon clattered Cucurella, it was bouncing. Yeah, atmosphere was good, Mark. I'm not sure, sometimes it's down to where the microphones are placed within the stadium. But for me, John, I thought the atmosphere was pretty good. And I think Paul's probably nailed it on the head there, that it was, it always sometimes takes something like that to ignite the crowd.
It does, and I mentioned that very early on in this podcast, that is what set the tone of the evening for the fans and for Newcastle United. And I want us to start on the front foot against Arsenal. I always say, when I say that, I'm not talking about us being gung-ho and throwing caution to the wind, because then Arsenal would pick you off something rotten. It's got to be organised, but it's got to... What I liked about our first half was that we were back to a high pressing game where we pressed as a team. We pressed in bundles of three. We closed the ground down. We set the emotion up. As I say, the second half was totally different. You're 2-0 up at half time. You're 45 minutes off being in the next round of the cup. Yeah, effectively job done, as long as you defend and defend well, and we did do that. And we were very composed in the way we defended. It was good game management. But against Arsenal, we're going to have to start front foot. We're going to have to take some of the game to them. Now, whether we do it in the way we did on the counter or not, because they'll have the ball a lot, is a matter for our guys to work out. But we've got a real chance now. I cannot even think or contemplate what going into this game on Saturday would have been like if we hadn't got through against Chelsea in the Cup, because the mood would have been absolutely horrible. And I'm just looking for a good performance and avoiding defeat, because then, as I said, with the fixtures it's to come, we can launch a run, and we've got to get rid of those awful figures that I give you. They aren't an opinion. They're not an opinion. They are fact that we've done as poorly as that recently. That's why we're 12th. And we were 7th last season, and we're very disappointed with that. And we thought this season would be good because we didn't have Europe, and we didn't have a lot of extra games, therefore, and that the results would come. They haven't quite. They came early in the season without the performances, and then they didn't come recently. But there's hope there, and there's genuine hope there. And as long as we take a realistic attitude into the game on Saturday, it is that much harder. And Arsenal is not a good opposition to have immediately after something like this, because they're going for the title this year. They can't keep finishing second. They've got to make a huge push to get above Man City. And I know they've got Liverpool in the equation as well now. So it's going to be interesting. But they aren't at full strength. Their skipper's out. They're not invincible. We've got to have a real go at them.
Yep, certainly have. Question for Gibbo from Alan. He says, give us your other favourite teams if you've got one, John. He says, do you have a Scottish team? Do you have a European team that you follow? And do you have a non-league team? I've got to be honest, I know Gibbo's answered a non-league, I think. I'm not so sure whether he follows Scottish teams or European teams. Is there a particular Scottish or European one you follow along with your non-league?
Not really. I mean, my other team is Gateshead, and not just because I owned them for a decade. I did that because they were my other team. When I was a little lad in Benwell and going to school up there, I used to go, and we didn't have a couple of pennies to rub together. I couldn't even get the tram or the trolley bus along to St. James's Park. I walked from Benwell through Elsick to the Big Lamp and down to St James's Park with my Uncle Frank, watched Newcastle play and walked back home. And on the days when on the weekends when Newcastle were away, I certainly couldn't, if I couldn't afford to get the trolley bus to St James's Park, I certainly couldn't go on an away trip. So I used to walk down to Redheugh Bridge, over the bridge and down to Redheugh Park to watch Gateshead in the old 3rd Division North. So they were always my two clubs. And in those days, there weren't a non-league side Gateshead, they were in the 3rd Division North. But I stood on the terraces of both grounds, and they've always been my two teams without a shadow of a doubt. I've always, if there was anybody in Scotland I supported, it would be Cocky Juniors, and if there was anybody in England, it would be anybody bar Sunderland, and if it was anybody abroad, the team that was always in my mind, although I didn't really support them, but held them up as wonderful, was Real Madrid, because they haven't just got the history now. They had the history from way back with Di Stefano and Puskás and all the great players they had. They were great before Barca were great. So they were a side that I admired. But being a basic Geordie lad, it's always been Newcastle United 1, Gateshead 2 for me.
Okay, good stuff. When's Botman back, says Craig? It's December, that Eddie Howe said at his press conference last week. December certainly seems to be the month that he is keen on having him back as well. Steve Beckwith says, question for Gibbo, do you think we could play 3 at the back with Tino and Hall as wing backs in a 5-3-2? Thoughts on that? I much prefer 4-4-2 with the players we've got, Steve. But Gibbo, thoughts on that kind of formation?
In certain games, that could happen, and I know where the guy's coming from, because that puts the accent on Tino's ability to go forward, and that's still Hall's greatest strength, although he's improved terrifically defensively. It's obviously Tino's great strength, and it releases more of that when you've got 3 at the back. And I think there's certain games, particularly away from home, where that would suit. The horses for courses thing, like I'm saying, I would possibly play Kraft right back against Arsenal. I certainly knew that they would play him against Chelsea in the Cup. And those sort of attacking teams rather suit what Emil can do. But I don't want to see us go 5 at the back. Some people like to say it's only 3 at the back, but I don't necessarily like us to go 3 at the back. Not as a regular feature of the team. On the odd occasion, it can happen, and that would release Tino and Hall to get on the bikes a bit more. But I like a steady back 4. I'm happy. I think it suits the players we've got more. I mean, there's occasions, if we're truthful, Steve, when we find it hard to pick 2 centre halves, never mind 3. The way form's going, when Dan's had his limitations with pace, and when Shaw has not been quite what he can be, and with Botman and Lascelles out, there's been the difficulty sometimes of picking 2, never mind 3, to play centre back.
Feel a bit sorry for Lascelles. No one ever seems to ask when he's back, says C. Anderson. Yes, I can understand that, but he's due to be back around about the same time. I think their injuries weren't too far apart. What did you think of Asula when he came on last night, John? I mean, there's a bit about the lad. He's a young lad still. I know he's not young, but he's still learning, I guess, to play with his group of players, which is always going to be hard. But it was a decent little cameo last night. He was bloody unlucky when Krafu ran through and played the ball through, and he hit the post.
Yeah. I mean, he showed in that little minute why Mad Dog was recommending him from his Sheffield United days, and why we took a punt on him. He's well short of regular Premier League starting class at the moment, but he's a Ben. He's going to come on. He has suffered because we haven't got anybody under Isaac because of Callum Wilson. He's suffered in comparison because we've said, well, he's not ready for it, etc., and he probably isn't. I mean, the 2 real looks at him we've got have been in the League Cup, haven't they? he had something about him. I wish he had scored with that one because it would have done him the world of good and it would have been nice. But perhaps it's a good idea that he didn't, because all of a sudden some people would be banging on about him wanting to play off the shoulder of Isaac or something before his time's up. I mean, the lad's got a tough old rule to do. He's come to a club that's built on number 9 legends. You know, when you think of Super Mac, when you think of Big Alan Shearer, when you think of Warjackie, Les Ferdinand, go all the way back to Hughie Gallagher. You know, let's not burden them too quickly with them following in the number 9 legends, because they're big boots to fill. But yes, he showed a little something. I'm delighted for the lad. I'm delighted for us. We're still short in that position, of course, because of the Callum Wilson thing. And we've still got to address outside right as the absolute priority in January, because we don't know what to do about it, do we? I mean, we don't know what to do about that position. Miggy's yesterday's man. Murphy is a bench player at best. We've got to play Gordon out of position and then on the other side, Harvey Barnes hasn't done as well as I would have expected for the money we paid. Outside of his goals, his performances haven't been top quality, and we're now playing Big Joe there. We've got an abundance of left players. We've got nobody on the right. We've got to get it right. For me, we've still got to get a centre forward. I think we need that. And in an ideal world, we could do with a right-sided centre half to be pushing Shaw, whose form's dipped a little bit after looking such a good player. His form's dipped a little bit. He's on the wrong side of 30. And when that happens with players, you need other people to be around, and we need somebody there. But outside right is absolutely belting on the door that we need to do something about that.
Yeah, I would agree. Set pieces. It was good to see somebody different, aka Tonali, taking them last night. But yeah, I mean, corners, John, were still pitiful on corners. We discussed this a little bit over the course of the last 7 to 10 days on NUFC Matters. But the record I think now stands at something like 54 corners without a goal, which we went through this in the past with Alan Pardew.
Yes. I mean, and really, isn't it going to be highlighted on Saturday? Not too much, I hope, because every corner that Arsenal get is only one step off being a penalty. Is shot at goal, because I mean the number of goals they get, and they've got a set piece coach who's so clever on these things, and I think a lot of dark arts come into it, because there's an awful lot of fouls in there when they block off the keeper and they do all sorts of things. But if you can get away with it, then that's part of the game. It's a joke, by the way, when Mikel Arteta goes on about Newcastle with the dark arts, because he's the master of the dark arts, is Arteta. I mean, all Arsenal fans love him, but I think every other football fan in the whole of the country doesn't like him whatsoever, because he's a moaning, miserable, whirling dervisher on the touchline. Not my guy by a million miles. But he has lifted this Arsenal side from being a side with history and little more after Arsene Wenger to a side that looking as if they can push for the championship, as they've proved over the last 2 seasons and a bit. And he's slowly getting them closer and closer. So he has worked for them. But we all remember him up here when he complained about that Newcastle goal when we beat them, when we had 3 looks at VAR, looked at 3 of the things and found none of them offensive, and the goal stood. And he was a little bit just chuffed about that. I would love to see that repeated on Saturday. We win 1-0 and he complains about the goal. That would do for me.
Yeah, I would be over the moon about that as well. It beggars belief, no goals from corners, yet we all celebrate getting a corner, although it's something special.
That's right.
And Dave says, how refreshing, no VAR, 1 minute added first half and 3 in the second. Yeah, it makes a hell of a difference, doesn't it? It really, really does. Couple of other questions in the chat. John says, do you have much faith in Paul Mitchell, John? Or do you think that'll be clearer at the end of January? And following on from that, he said, if we get a bit of form back before Christmas, can a good January window give us the hope of a Champions League place still?
By Jove, there's a lot of we've gone from being 12th on the back of one win in the cup to going into the Champions League.
That's Newcastle United.
What did I say about Jody's living on pogo sticks, going up and down like a fiddler's elbow? We're brilliant at that, aren't we? I would love to think so, but I can't visualize for 1 second us getting in the Champions League this season. I think it's too much of an ask. And I think one of the reasons we won't is because we've had bad transfer windows. There's no question about that. But we have, as I've highlighted, a real opportunity between the Arsenal game and Christmas Day to get a collection of points together. And we need to do that because the window opens a couple of weeks later and we need to be busy. Paul Mitchell will be determined a lot by what happens in January. Now, he would say, no doubt, if he was asked, judge me after next summer, because that is a transfer window when you've got time to do something, when clubs are willing to sell because they've got time to buy a replacement. If you sell a top player in January, you've got no time to buy a replacement, so they're very reluctant to sell. But of course, one of the reasons Paul Mitchell has been viewed in a negative sort of ways, not just the interviews that he gave, which were very forthright and very bullish in the summer, but the fact that he was unable to put through any transfer deals for us. In terms of Gahey, which we wasted all our time trying to bid up to 70 million for him, then didn't get him. I know that Newcastle United are saying privately that one of the reasons why we had such a bad transfer window is that there was no real plan B that Eddie wanted. It was get Gay or nobody. He wasn't particularly front foot. This is what's being said in defense of the club. I don't know if it's true, but this is what they're saying privately, that there wasn't a plan B in the transfer market, that Eddie was staunch about the people he didn't want in, so we didn't get somebody in. But we've got to be fluid, and we needn't go into all this again because we've done it so often, but we've got to sell and we've got to buy well. And we can't wait until next summer to do anything in the transfer market. We've got to have a go in January. We really have to have a go in January. Otherwise, we're sacrificing this season because, this season without an injection of new blood in January will fall short of all expectations, regardless of whether we go on a run between now and Christmas. We have got to get help in.
Yeah, I agree. From my perspective, that transfer window that we've just had was the biggest disappointment out of the two that we've just had. And you're right. I think we just concentrated all our efforts on trying to bring Gahey in. It was a waste of time. But I still think that and we've discussed it on here before. I think the whole Ashworth thing and then Mitchell coming in so late, I think that that really hamstrung us. And of course, we know the difference with PSR, etc., is something which other clubs don't have to deal with like we do. So there's all of those kind of things pointing to this next window, because we're now into the next phase, has been a more positive one. So hopefully Paul Mitchell has done his homework. That's what he gets paid for, and he will have a bit more success in this transfer window. And I think sellable assets. I play devil's advocate on here quite a lot, and I genuinely feel that if they can get rid of a Wilson or an Almiron or a player that isn't like a first team regular as such at the moment, to try and facilitate a bit more money on the table for Newcastle. That's what they could do. And I still think now, I think we're almost being conditioned in that way of thinking that, if there was a Harvey Barnes had to go, if a Bruno had to go, I don't think there would be as much of an outcry, John, as there would have been a year and a half ago, 2 years, because I think people now fully understand that we've now been subjected to two very quiet transfer windows. And I think if Darren Eales or whoever it is who succeeds him comes out and says, we need to sell to buy, I think if Newcastle could do what Aston Villa have done, which I've mentioned on here a few times this week, and bring in 4 players for one going out. And somebody just said, would you still sell Tonali, Steve? If that was the deal that was going to create 4 players coming in, why not Blue Rhythm Boy? Nobody is unsellable, and unfortunately, that's just football. We won't always get the players that we want to go out. If Tonali, if Tonali is a huge offer for Tonali, hey, you've got to consider it. It's might not be popular with some of the fan base, but it's just the way it is. We had to sell ASM for the same reason, John.
I mean, what we've done wrong in terms of selling is that people like Wilson and Almiron and Trippier, we could have sold those 2 windows ago when the value was reasonably high. Wilson's value's plummeted to nil. You can't sell Wilson in January. He hasn't played since they knocked down Hadrian's Wall. I mean, how's anybody going to pay for him? There's absolutely no chance. I mean, Almiron's gone from 25 million to about 15 million, and Trippier is 34 now. So, we have missed big opportunities to sell those 3 and get a few quid in. They're worth less and less, and in Wilson's case, nothing at all now. And so we've got to look elsewhere. Bonds, for me, if somebody will pay the money, and I wonder who it would be, Bonds is sellable. There's always going to be fans, and I thoroughly understand it and respect it, and say, oh no, hold on to Bonds, he scores goals. You've got to hang on to Tonali because he had a good game last night and he will be a top player. You've got to hold on to Bruno because he's your skipper. You've got to hold on to Isak because he scored 25 goals last season. But somewhere, somebody's got to go. Now, and it might well be that Isak forces your hand because he wants Champions League football, forces your hand in the summer, next summer, not in January, etc., etc. Will somebody pay 100 million for Bruno? I mean, it sounds awful and it'll upset fans, but if somebody would, that's a decent deal, because that is big, big money. And somebody somewhere's got to go. Aston Villa, which I mentioned on here a couple of podcasts ago, and you've mentioned it since, is a perfect example of how they sold Luiz, their best player, in the summer, having qualified for the Champions League, got a couple of players in on the back of that. And what's happened? They've looked even better. Forget the League Cup defeat, because they're looking at the Champions League and qualifying for the Champions League again and the FA Cup. But I mean, they have had a terrific season. They haven't faltered like we did when we went in the Champions League after the great result against Paris Saint-Germain. There's got to be a little bit of thrust and parry. We have not moved anybody on. Now, we look at Paul Mitchell, etc., but I've got to say that on selling, not on buying, on selling, I look at Eddie as well. Eddie is very reluctant to let anybody go. He hangs on to them until the pension. I mean, he lets Matt Ritchie go, bless him, and he's 34 or something. He's lucky if he gets on 10 minutes for Portsmouth this season. He lets Dummett go eventually, who can't find a club, bless him. We hang on to people until it's far too late, and you can't do that. And we have done it regularly. We've got to open my mind and say, if I'm told somebody's great in the dressing room again, I'll go drinking crackers. When did we last play a game in the dressing room? Like, how about being good on the grass? I mean, that's what appeals to me. Let's be good on the grass. And if he's a handful to handle in the dressing room, then get on with it. He's good on the grass, so it's worth it. Being good on the dressing room, what's that mean? That he goes and gets the drinks in, and that he tells a few jokes, and then he sits and we never see him come match day. Let's be good on the grass. Never mind too much about the dressing room.
Okay, a couple of minutes left just to look ahead to the Arsenal game. John, you've touched on it quite a bit. You've already given us some stats, so we don't need to dwell on it too much. It's a big game, 12:30 kickoff live on TNT Sports. Defeat Arsenal would make it 6 games in the league without victory, which would be the longest barren run Eddie's side have endured since 2023, which was also 6 games. Jacob Murphy's a doubt with a hamstring issue that saw him miss Wednesday's Carabao Cup game. Trippier, Botman, Lascelles, Wilson all still out. Still no news on Matt Targett. Dubravka resurfaced last night on the bench. Joe Linton and Dan Burn are one booking away from an automatic 1-match suspension. As for the visitors, Tierney, Timber are out. Saliba is available after suspension, and Odegaard, Gabriel, and Tomiyasu could all be involved. Ahead of the visit to Newcastle, Mikel Arteta's side won 3-0 at Preston in the Carabao Cup on Wednesday night. 4 away games in the Premier League for Arsenal so far this season. They won at Aston Villa 2-0, won at Spurs 1-0, drew at Man City 2-2, and a defeat at Bournemouth by 2-0. Former Newcastle midfielder Mikel Merino is set for his first competitive return to St James's Park since he left SJP. Referee is John Brooks, first Newcastle game of the season, and on VAR, which is welcome back, is the best a man can get again. It's Gerard Gillette. So, John, I am going for a Newcastle United win in this game by 2-1. We really do get up for these games. And I think the momentum will carry on from the decent performance on Wednesday. I do think that Isak's got his scoring boots back on, and I think they'll want to go out and impress. I think a 2-1 win. It's going to be tight. It's going to be on the edge of your seat, but I think it's going to be a 2-1 win for the Toon.
I had an awful feeling that you would say that, you know. I somehow anticipated that you might be going for victory, because you know why I thought that? Because I can see that pogo stick behind you just resting up against the wall where we go up and down and up and down and up. I mean, I really hope you're right. When you were reading those away results for Arsenal in the Premier League, outside of the defeated Bournemouth, and I think that they have somebody sent off or whatever in that game, outside of that defeat, the results have been terrific. They've played good sides away, haven't they? I think you mentioned they played Spurs and they played whoever but they've done well away from home. Without dwelling on it and without wanting to be a wet blanket, because I certainly don't as a Geordie. I love to be optimistic and I've got refreshed hope, etc., etc. But I keep trying to remind myself we're playing Arsenal first team, not Chelsea's reserves, and that is a significant difference. For me, I think that it is giving us hope that we would never have had we lost in being out of the League Cup. We've got real hope now. There must be more belief in the team. There must be more belief on the terraces. There must be more belief in Eddie Howe. I think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be the same as when we played Manchester City at home, when we got a draw with a terrific performance and a good point against the best side in the country. This is the second best side in the country, and I think it'll take another big effort like we had against Man City. I think we'll produce another big effort, but I think it'll be a draw. And if it is a draw, with the matches that's to come, it does form a basis for us to knock on significantly. If we have in a week Chelsea away, Chelsea at home, and Arsenal at home, and we get a win, lose, and draw, it's not as bad as it has been. And I think after Chelsea, a draw would be terrific. Of course, a win, like you suggested, would be even better. And it's not impossible. They're not unbeatable. We are a better side than we've looked recently, but I'm going for the same as we produced against Man City.
Great stuff. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to the moderators as well. Back tomorrow, 5 o'clock till 7 with the Amigos. And John, back with you next week, mate. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the game, my friend.
And you. Keep the faith, guys.